Hello, this is Dean Tate and welcome to this week's Captain Forever Remix Dev Diary. This week I'm going to be talking about my process thus far in creating a new look for all of the ship modules in the game. What you're looking at right now is a collection of screenshots from the original Captain Forever and Captain Successor. The original games had around 20-25 different module types, so we're going to be adding more. And it's my job to come up with a new look for these that's a little bit different from the original vector style from those games. So the beginning of my process involved thinking about how the different modules would look given that they can go through 10 or so different power levels. Each of those power levels is represented by a different color, which makes my job really hard because I can't use color for anything but power level. So originally I'd been thinking that each of the different power levels would be differentiated not only by color but also by surface detail. That earlier power levels would be represented by this kind of more ramshackle look, and that as the ship parts became more powerful you'd start to see sort of technologically advanced surface detail, circuitry, and more smooth surfaces, things that don't have any edges or seams in them. And I quickly realized that this was just an absolutely insane approach. It would have meant that I'd have to build around 250 different assets to cover all of the different module types and all of the different power levels. So I really quickly backed away from this and kind of took a break from thinking about how to make the different power levels look different and started thinking about different styles for the edge style for each of the different modules and the color palette and how many different colors would be in the palette for each of the different power levels. So that's what this set of experiences was about, experimenting with different styles of stroke around the ships, different placement of colors, trying to keep the color palette really, really low, around 3 to 5 different colors, because you'd be viewing these modules from really far back a lot of the time, and so the more colors that you have, the more kind of messy things start to look. And so this set that you're seeing here is sort of the style that we landed on. Very light stroke, and then just 2 different colors for the surface detail and the interior of the module. So from here I kind of took a step back and started to think about what that surface detail would look like, and started playing with these different styles of placement of shapes and this sort of kick bashing style that you see in other bits of media. You can see some more here. I misspelled surface. Whatever, I just noticed that now. So yeah, you can see some more experiments here. I wasn't really happy with this approach in the end because I feared that we were starting to land on a game that looked quite generic. You know, that we're going to have spaceships that looked like spaceships from every other game out there, but just with far less detail, which wasn't going to cut it. So I decided that I needed to find a different place to be drawing my reference from. I started looking at different bits and pieces of musical hardware, given that our game is a remix. I started to notice that the sorts of surface details that you see on these sorts of things are very similar to what you see on spaceships in other media, but it has this very distinct kind of musical style to it. And so I started to experiment with applying these sorts of shapes and types of detail to the different module types, and I thought this was really successful. They still look like spaceships, but when you kind of step back and think about it a little bit, you start to realize that these different elements are taken from musical hardware. So it was really successful. I started to apply it to all of our different module types. I then started to think about how to differentiate all of the different types of modules, again there are around 25 of them, from each other just using silhouette. Ran these really quick experiments to come up with different silhouettes for each of the different module types. So on the left you can see assets from the original games, and then on your right you can see my experiments for Remix. I did around 5 or so different silhouettes for each of the different module types, and then I kind of would pick one that looked the most distinct from the rest and kind of ran with that. So switching over to here you can see the final set of modules that we have working the game right now. First thing you'll notice is that they're grayscale. Color is applied in the game using this really cool system that B-Chan came up with, which means that I only need to make one asset for each of the different module types in Illustrator, which is great. It frees me up. It divides the work by 10, which is amazing. And it's going to be very easy for me to make different variants for each of these different modules, so that, you know, say when a 1x1 bulkhead shows up, you might see this sort of cassette tape in a circle show up. Other times you might see other surface details show up, so there'll be a little variety. So switching over to the game now, you can see that color being applied, you can see glow being applied, you can see that when you're really far back like this, the silhouettes still read pretty well. You can still see the really bright outline for each of the different modules, and then as you zoom in, the surface detail becomes visible there, and you can kind of read that detail, which is really cool. It's something that the original games didn't really have, and we have the luxury of having that here. I'm hoping to paint lots and lots of different surface details to get a lot of variation, and maybe even animate this stuff. So that's where we're at right now. It's taken me a long time to get to where we're at, and I'm sure I'm going to iterate on this stuff around 1,000,000 times, because this is the most important part of the game to get right, in my opinion. It's going to take the most amount of work. So thanks a lot for watching this week. Don't forget to follow us here on YouTube, and also follow our dev blog over on Tumblr. We'll see you next week.